Hello friends, Del Ballou here with another art tutorial. This time I'm going to be painting in oils and I'm going to do a sunrise at Edisto, South Carolina beach. And I'm going to begin with a white canvas. I have not primed it. It's already been primed at the factory with gesso. But I'm going to be using cobalt blue, and you've seen the photograph at the beginning of this video, which I'm going to be painting from. So let's get started. Now, I am using liquid because I want this painting to be smooth, and I also want to work primarily from some sense of the shapes of the colors and the way they blend without actually blending them together until I've placed them on the canvas. So I'm going to begin with my cobalt blue. And because, as I have mentioned to you before, if you've been with me on any of my art tutorials, the fact that no one's going to be seeing this photograph, so if you get it right or if I get it right, that's okay, and if I don't, that's okay too. Notice that I am also paying close attention to my edges, because if I don't do them at this point, it's quite possible that I will not get the exact same color when I'm all finished. Now I'm going back over this and putting some straight color on because I actually have a little bit too much of the liquid. Now I'm getting to a point where I need to change colors, so I need to pay close attention to those areas. And I basically want to leave them, the other colors in this sunset. And one thing I have forgotten to do, which is pretty important here, and that is to mark my horizon line with some masking tape. So let me do that. And it's usually advisable not to make your horizon in the very center. And insofar as my photograph is concerned, I think about maybe a third of the way down. I should say up. 2/3 of the way. And I will be going over this tape, and when I get to the point where I remove it, if it's not absolutely straight from top to bottom, I can make some adjustments then. But just good rule of thumb, if you put the masking tape down, you're far more likely to have a straight horizon line. Okay, now I'm going to go into alizarin crimson, and the alizarin crimson is going to be in various values. From the horizon line on up into the clouds, And this photograph is actually one that I took myself. One of the few sunsets I've seen as an adult, because I do not like to get up early in the morning, so I'm rarely awake at sunrise. Now, because this photograph is darker at the bottom, I'm going to begin, I'm talking about the alizarin. Because it's darker at the bottom, I'm beginning with some cobalt mixed in. Now you see why it's a good thing to have that tape down. And once I get these colors placed, I can start to add more color to them to intensify them. My brush handle is flaking off. I had this problem the last time I used this brush, so I'm going to have to knock it off this time. It won't let me pick it off. Okay. Now, the way that you can tone down your colors is by putting a touch of the complementary color. In this case, I'm okay with this alizarin crimson because I have put just a touch of blue in it. Establishing shapes is important, as I've mentioned. And they can change once you get the other colors blended in. This is the darker area. Now, while this is wet, I'm going to go over here to the side and bring in some more of my blue. Clean some of the alizarin out of my brush. Now, my best advice when you're going to be blending colors is that you begin away from the color that you're blending to, so that you're not bringing the other color too much into the field till you're ready to do that. So one thing you can see as right there, I managed to pull some of that alizarin in before I was ready. And again, pay attention to these edges. I'm going to go ahead and put my sunrise in there before I get too caught up. I like to mix with a palette knife, especially the first time, because when I go to get paint out of that area, that particular little stash of paint, then I don't have to worry about getting the paint from the other areas in there. So right now I'm mixing up some yellow and some white. I'm using cadmium barium yellow light and cadmium yellow medium, and I'm mixing that with white. And because this is my first layer, I can always go back and change that. But I have some bright patches of yellow in here. And at this point, again, I want to keep my colors pretty separate. There's going to be a little bit mixed in with my alizarin crimson over here. And there's even a little splash of the sun coming in right here. And there's going to be a little bit mixed in over here. There's a big wave of the alizarin crimson, which I'm not going to introduce into my painting. Okay. Much of what's going on in the sky is going to be repeated down in the water and the beach reflections. But I'm not going to worry about that at this particular point. But now I'm going to get some alizarin crimson mixed with white. It's much easier when you're putting your colors down if you pretty much put down what you want to happen, because it's easier to make those corrections while the paint is wet. Than to have to try to take it off, or worse still, cover it up. I've got a little yellow in my brush, but that's okay because the yellow tends to pop through this sky. So that's okay. I'm scattering the color that's on my brush around, because that's pretty much what's happening in the sky. They're very subtle changes. The way I happened to actually be awake for this photo op was that I just couldn't go to sleep the night before. You'd think sleeping at the beach when you can hear the ocean waves would be a great place to sleep. But for some reason it just wasn't for me that particular night. And when I noticed it was getting light outside, I said, you know, I can actually take advantage of this being awake all night. I'm going to get my camera. And the place we were staying was a house that had a sun porch, but the sun porch had windows all around that windows would go up and down. So what I ended up doing was leaning out those windows to get the photographs, and I have a whole series of photographs in different stages of the sunrise, and they're all beautiful. Okay, don't be concerned that these colors look like stripes right now, because it'll be okay. It'll be okay in the great happy ending of this painting. One thing I'm experimenting with in this particular painting is my lighting. The best place to work is beside my sliding door, but I found out over time that in the afternoon when the sun starts to go down, it gets just too bright, but it causes a change in the atmosphere that has a detrimental effect on what I'm trying to do with my painting. Okay, that's pretty bizarre right now, but it'll get better. Okay, I'm going to switch back to my blue for now and work a little bit more on my top section. Now, if you know what happens when you mix yellow and blue. You'll know why we might need to be careful with blending on this area. It's okay if these areas blend together because they will remain true to what was happening in the sky. Because I have liquid on my canvas, this should dry fairly quickly, and I can come back and add more color where I need to. And you'll want to cover up those brush strokes. Okay, now this is where it gets tricky. I'm cleaning my brush out very, very well. And I found that I had a little bit of blue left in there, and I really don't want that. Now, this is where you need to have a paper towel or a cloth, whichever you like to work with, so that when you come across very lightly, you wipe the paint off so that you don't blend it too much. As long as I have the same color on my brush, I can go in the same area. But I don't want to go too much over the yellow areas. Without wiping, that is. What I'm doing right here is trying to get some of the stripes out. Again, I'm trying to work some of the obvious stripes out, though they do appear in the photograph. Now, in some cases, there might not be enough paint to spread. We might have to add some back. Warm colors don't typically dry very fast. Okay, now notice I'm not pulling into this yellow. I'll have this blue in my brush because I don't want it to be green. But it is quite all right for the yellow and the alizarin to mix together. Because that's what's happening in the sky as the sun is coming up. Pushing my canvas out of range. Sorry about that. See what I did when I changed the color over here, I also changed it on my edges. It's just really one of the pleasures of working with oils. I'm still wiping my brush on occasion while I'm working in this area. So I don't want to wipe out all of my yellow for sure. I can come back with my yellow because some of the sun is popping through rather brightly. I love an alizarin sky. Okay, I'm going to let this dry, and I'll be back in part 2. We'll go down below the sky and work further on the rest of the painting. Okay, well, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for part 2 of Sunset at Edisto.